contempt. Every spoon clink and coffee sip in the tiny diner froze. Conversations halted. Heads turned. Daniel Reed, tall, immaculately dressed in a navy wool coat and polished shoes, stood at the edge of booth 3, his face pale with fury, lips curled with disgust. Across from him, a black waitress knelt on the linoleum floor, gently holding a 5-year-old girl who was sobbing into her chest. The little girl clutched the woman's apron with trembling fingers. "I said don't touch her." The woman slowly looked up. Her eyes were wide but steady, her voice shaking but soft. "I'm sorry, sir." She was crying, asking for her mom. "I just held her. That's all." Daniel's jaw clenched. His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You think because you wear that rag and hand out coffee you can just insert yourself into my life? You think my daughter needs someone like you?" He stepped closer. "Stay in your lane. This isn't your world." The waitress instinctively backed away on her knees, the weight of his words sinking into her skin like cold water. "Still," she whispered. She looked so lost. I couldn't just stand there." His hands tightened at his sides. "Don't pretend this was for her. You're looking for attention or pity. Either way, you don't belong near my daughter. Not you. Not your kind." And then, in a moment driven more by instinct than reason, he shoved her. It wasn't hard, but it was enough. The waitress, no more than 29, slender, exhausted, fell back, landing hard against the leg of a table. The edge struck her side, and she gasped as her elbow scraped the floor. Blood appeared in a thin line across her arm. A hush spread like wildfire across the diner. Ava, the little girl, looked up. "Daddy," she whispered, eyes wide in terror. Daniel didn't move. The waitress sat up slowly, blinking back tears of pain, one arm wrapped around her ribs. "I didn't mean to upset anyone." "Please," she said, voice thin. "My name is Maya William. I wasn't trying to intrude." He turned away from her, jaw set. "You already did." Just then, the manager of the diner, a short, red-haired woman, in her 60 seconds named Mrs. Miriam, rushed over. "What's going on here?" she demanded, looking from Maya to Daniel to the still crying child. "She laid her hands on my daughter," Daniel snapped. Mrs. Miriam turned to Maya, eyes flashing. "You touched a guest's kid?" Maya's voice cracked. She was crying. "I didn't want her to feel alone." "You're not here to feel anything," the manager barked. "You're here to serve. You want to hug kids? Go work at a daycare. You're lucky he doesn't press charges." Maya's lip trembled. Her breath shook. She looked between the furious manager and the cold, well-dressed man holding his daughter's hand like a trophy. And then, she broke. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't fire me. My mother's sick. She needs medicine every week. I can't afford to lose this job." The manager folded her arms. "This ain't a charity." Maya lowered her head. "I know, I'm sorry." Daniel looked at her again, not with anger now, but with something else. The pleading in her voice didn't sit right. The way she'd held Ava, that hadn't been calculated. It had been instinctive, familiar, human. He looked down at Ava, who was now clutching his leg, her face pressed into his trousers. "She made me feel warm," the little girl whispered, barely audible. Daniel didn't respond. He turned back to Maya one last time. She stood now, arm still bleeding, wiping it quietly with a napkin from her apron. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Without another word, he scooped Ava into his arms and turned toward the door. Outside, the cold bit through his coat. Ava shivered in his embrace. He didn't know why his chest felt tight. He didn't know why the image of Maya kneeling, arms wrapped around a child who wasn't hers, apologizing while bleeding wouldn't leave his mind. He only knew that for the first time in months, his daughter had cried into someone's arms, and it wasn't out of fear. It was relief. The silence inside the black Cadillac Escalade was heavy as stone. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, knuckles pale beneath the leather of his gloves. He didn't look at Ava, who sat strapped into her booster seat in the back, her head turned toward the window, staring at nothing. The wipers swept across the windshield rhythmically, clearing away the light drizzle. They sounded louder than usual. Or maybe that was just because Daniel couldn't stop hearing the words he'd spat only moments earlier. You don't belong near my daughter. Not you. Not your kind. They echoed in his mind like a sour aftertaste. He stole a glance in the rearview mirror. Ava hadn't said a word since they left the diner. Not about the food. Not about the waitress. Not even about the shouting. Just silence. She hadn't even cried. That wasn't like her. Back at the estate, the gates swung open automatically. The property was lined with manicured hedges, trimmed like military haircuts. The house itself, a modern steel and glass marvel, glowed like a cold museum under the gray sky. Daniel pulled into the roundabout driveway and parked. He opened the back door, and Ava unbuckled herself with slow, quiet hands. "Come on," he said gently. She stepped out without a word, holding her stuffed rabbit to her chest like a shield. Inside, the warmth and marble floors welcomed them, but nothing felt comforting. Daniel placed his keys in the tray by the door and handed his coat to Elena, the housekeeper, who gave Ava a smile that wasn't returned. "Everything all right, mister?" "Reed?" Elena asked. "Yes," he replied quickly. "Just a long morning." Ava headed upstairs without asking. She didn't even turn back. Daniel poured himself a glass of water in the kitchen, his jaw tense. He couldn't shake the image of the waitress Maya on the floor. Blood on her arm, voice trembling. And yet, even then, she hadn't cursed him. She hadn't lashed out. She'd apologized, pleaded. Not for herself, but for her job. For her mother. He hated that the moment had stayed with him. He told himself he had every right to be furious. She had crossed a line. No one, no stranger had the right to put their hands on his child, no matter the circumstances. But when he remembered the way Ava clung to Maya, the soft murmur of the child's voice, she made me feel warm. Something inside him cracked. Daniel went up to Ava's room. He paused at the door and watched her from the hallway. She sat on the floor, braiding her bunny's ears. Her little face was unreadable, but it wasn't the flatness that struck him, it was the tiredness. 5 years old, and already carrying weight she shouldn't. He knocked gently. "Hey, kiddo." She didn't answer, but she didn't tell him to go away either. He stepped inside. "You hungry?" A shake of the head. "Wanna talk?" Another shake. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees. "About what happened at the diner." Ava didn't look up. "I didn't like someone touching you without permission. That's why I got mad." She finally lifted her gaze. "You yelled at her." "Yes," he admitted. "You pushed her." He hesitated. "I did." "She got hurt," Ava whispered. "You made her bleed." Daniel rubbed his face. "I know. I shouldn't have. She was just nice to me." The words hit harder than they should have. He swallowed. "I miss Mommy," Ava said next, like she was reminding him, or maybe herself. Daniel stared at the floor. "Me too." Silence stretched between them. "She smelled like vanilla," Ava added. Daniel blinked. "Who?" "Maya." That name, hearing it from his daughter's mouth, felt strange. Personal. Soft. "I felt safe," Ava said, then picked at a frayed thread on her bunny's paw, like Mommy was close. Daniel's heart pulled tight in his chest. He didn't know what to say to that. That night, he poured himself a scotch and sat in his study. He stared at the fireplace but didn't light it. He didn't need heat. He needed clarity. He opened his laptop intending to work, but instead, typed into a search bar, "Maya William Boston Diner." Nothing. He refined it. "Maya William Waitress Miriam's Diner." Still nothing concrete. No LinkedIn, no profiles, no photos. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. Dirt? A reason to feel justified in his outburst? Or maybe something to prove she really was harmless. Instead, he closed the laptop and leaned back, sipping the drink, tasting ash. He saw her again in his mind, kneeling, calm under pressure, arms around Ava, a stranger who offered comfort without asking anything in return. Not many people had ever touched Ava without the little girl recoiling. She let the nurses hold her. Sometimes the nanny. Rarely Daniel himself. But this woman, a stranger, had been held like family. If that moment touched your heart too, don't forget to like this video to show your support for stories that matter. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? You never know, someone nearby might be watching with you right now. The next morning, Ava came down dressed and ready without being asked. She didn't speak until they were halfway through breakfast. Will we go to the diner again? Daniel looked up from his black coffee. Why? Ava shrugged, not meeting his eyes. Just wondered. He didn't answer. But all day, the question hung in his mind like smoke. That evening, after another hollow dinner, Daniel walked out onto the terrace, letting the breeze hit his face. He didn't believe in fate. Never had. He believed in logic, numbers, data, results. But something about Maya, her voice, her eyes, her stillness stayed with him. Something that whispered of things he didn't fully understand. Something Ava seemed to sense long before he could. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel Reed, a man who had built a fortune through control, precision, and walls, felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. The morning sun filtered softly through the glass windows of the office, casting long gold beams across Daniel's sleek mahogany desk. Normally, mornings at Reed Innovations began with a sharp focus, emails reviewed, investor calls lined up, meetings prepped with military precision. But today, Daniel sat motionless in his chair, staring not at his screen but at his reflection in the black monitor. He hadn't slept well. Not because of Ava's crying. She hadn't cried last night. That's what disturbed him most. She was quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet that signaled rest, but the kind that told him something inside her had shut down again. She had asked about the diner. No, not the diner, about her. About Maya. Daniel tapped his fingers slowly against the armrest, then turned toward the window. From the 38th floor, Boston looked clean and manageable. The way he preferred things, the way he had built his empire. But down on the street, where people like Maya worked and survived and bled without headlines, the world wasn't so orderly. He hated how much space she had taken up in his mind. She was just a waitress. Just another face in a sea of millions. But still, her voice had stayed. Ava's tears on her shoulder had stayed. And the way Maya didn't defend herself when insulted, shoved, humiliated, that stayed the most. She didn't even scream. Daniel reached for the file on his desk marked Private, Estate Expansion, but the words blurred. What kind of man pushed a woman? What kind of father let his grief turn into fear, and then into anger? He shut the file and stood. Meetings could wait. It wasn't planned. He told himself it was a coincidence that he drove past Miriam's diner again. It wasn't. He parked across the street, far enough that no one would recognize the car, close enough to observe. From behind the tinted window, he scanned the narrow diner, its chrome sign flickering slightly in the morning light. Maya wasn't there. An older waitress served coffee to an elderly couple by the window. A man in his 50s mopped near the back booth. No sign of her. Daniel leaned forward slightly. A strange tension built in his chest, like a pulled string waiting to snap. He wasn't sure what he had hoped for. To see her working as if nothing happened? To watch her limp from the bruises he caused and feel? What? Guilt? Closure? She was simply gone. He exhaled through his nose and leaned back, jaw tight. Maybe it was better that way, less messy. Then his phone buzzed. Greg asked, reminder, Onzam board W divisé par Seattle division. Need your presence. Slide sunt. Daniel ignored it. Instead, he rolled down the window halfway and let the autumn breeze sweep through the car. The sound of street noise filtered in engines, idling, footsteps, occasional laughter. Life moved on, indifferent to his unease. And then, a sound pierced through, a child laughing. His heart stopped for a second, not because it was unfamiliar, but because it was Ava's laugh. It looked up. Across the sidewalk, just outside a corner pharmacy 2 blocks away, stood a woman with a paper bag under her arm, helping an elderly lady into a cab. She wore a faded denim jacket, and her hair was tied back in a simple braid. Maya. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Her arm, the same one he'd seen bloodied, was bandaged under the jacket, just barely visible. She moved stiffly, carefully, but her face remained composed. The elderly woman she assisted smiled and patted her cheek before stepping into the cab. Daniel stared, unmoving. Maya stood there for a moment after the cab drove off, adjusting the strap on her bag. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a phone. not the sleek kind. An old, cracked screen model. She tapped it once, waited, and then pressed it to her ear. Daniel couldn't hear anything, but her body language said enough. Her head bowed slightly, her hand trembled. After a few seconds, she lowered the phone and sighed, shoulders sagging. Then she turned to walk in the opposite direction. Something gripped him harder than guilt, stronger than curiosity. He stepped out of the car. She didn't hear him approach at first, not until his voice broke the air. "Maya." She stopped mid-step, turning slowly. Her expression shifted from confusion to recognition, and then, just barely, to fear. She stood straighter. "Mr. Reed." He nodded once. "You're hurt." "Make." She looked down at her elbow, then back up. "I've had worse." Daniel didn't know what to say. This wasn't a boardroom. There were no metrics to hide behind. "I shouldn't have pushed you," he said. A flicker passed across her face. "No," she replied simply. "I was angry," he added. "That doesn't excuse it." "No," she said again, her voice steady, but quieter. He glanced away. "Why didn't you fight back? Or report me?" She hesitated. "Would you have listened if I had?" He looked at her then. Her eyes weren't challenging, they were tired. Tired in the way people get when they're used to swallowing pain before it swallows them. "No," he admitted. Silence stretched between them. Daniel took a deep breath. "Ava asked about you. Twice." Maya's lips parted slightly. "Is she all right?" He nodded. "She's quiet. But she remembered how you made her feel. Safe. She said you smelled like vanilla." That surprised a faint smile from Maya, the first since they met. "It's the hand cream," she said. "Cheap stuff. Smells like cookies." Daniel looked at her, really looked this time. She was younger than he thought, barely 30. The kind of woman the world overlooked unless she caused a scene, and she never did. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, "but I wanted you to know that I remember, and I regret it." She studied him for a long time. "You don't seem like the kind of man who says that often." "I'm not," Maya nodded slowly. Then, without smiling, she said, "I have to get back. My shift starts at the grocery store in 20 minutes. He stepped aside, letting her pass. As she walked away, Daniel called after her, his voice lower now. "If you ever need anything for your mother, let me know." She didn't turn around, but she stopped briefly and said, "She doesn't need charity. She needs dignity." "No." Then she walked away, fading into the rhythm of the street. Daniel stood there, hands in his coat pockets, heart heavier than when he arrived. She had answered him, not with fear, but with grace. Ava sat curled up on the oversized leather chair in the sunroom, her bunny tucked under one arm, a blanket pooled around her tiny frame like a cocoon. Morning light streamed in, scattering across the polished floor, but Daniel wasn't looking at the sunshine. He was watching his daughter. She had spoken again last night. A full sentence this time. "I wish the vanilla lady could read to me." Daniel hadn't known how to respond, so he'd simply said, "We'll see." Now, as Ava flipped through a picture book in silence, his mind was on the woman whose name he hadn't stopped thinking about since that awful day. Maya William. She hadn't reported him. She hadn't sued. She hadn't even spoken his name since. But her absence had changed something. It was as if she'd held up a mirror, and Daniel was finally seeing the cracks in himself, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a father. And they were deep. Greg entered the room with a tablet and a cautious expression. "Sir, the board is asking if you're planning to attend today's Q3 wrap meeting." Daniel barely glanced at the screen. "Have Rebecca handle it. Just send me the minutes." Greg hesitated. "It's the 4th meeting you've skipped this month." "I'm aware." Greg gave a slight nod. "Understood." Daniel waited until the door clicked shut behind him before walking over to Ava. "Hey, Jump." Ava looked up. "Want to take a drive?" he asked, voice casual. She blinked. "Where?" Daniel crouched beside her chair, somewhere with pancakes. A faint smile tugged at her lips. 10 minutes later, they were on the road again. The city passed by in smooth, sleepy rhythm brownstones, school buses, the familiar skyline slowly retreating in the rearview mirror. Ava clutched her bunny in one hand, the other resting quietly in her lap. They didn't speak much on the drive. but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence Daniel had once feared, and now, somehow, found comforting. When they reached the diner, he parked farther away than usual, out of instinct more than planning. As they stepped out, he took Ava's hand gently. Inside, the place smelled of bacon grease and syrup. Booth 3 was empty. Daniel scanned the room quickly. No sign of Maya. Ava tugged his sleeve. "She's not here." "I see that," he said, hiding his own flicker of disappointment. "We can still eat. You okay with that?" Ava nodded. Mrs. Miriam spotted them from the counter and stiffened. She walked over with a neutral expression. "Mr. Reed," she said, her tone polite but cool. "Back so soon?" Daniel gave a curt nod. "Yes, thought I'd treat my daughter to a better morning." Mrs. Miriam raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Ava climbed into the booth and waited patiently, as Daniel ordered pancakes for her and black coffee for himself. After the waitress left, Ava leaned over the table. "Can we see Maya again?" Daniel paused. "I don't know. She didn't do anything bad," Ava said softly. "I know. Then why did you get mad?" Daniel sighed. "Because I was scared." Ava tilted her head. "Scared of her?" "No," he admitted. "Scared I couldn't make you feel safe." She studied him with quiet curiosity. "She made me feel warm. Like Mommy." Daniel's throat tightened. "She didn't try," Ava added. "She just listened." He looked away, blinking hard. Their food arrived, and Ava ate slowly, savoring each bite. But Daniel couldn't taste his coffee. His thoughts were with the woman who had somehow touched the heart of his daughter in one fragile, honest moment. After breakfast, as they prepared to leave, a voice called out from the kitchen, "Wait." Daniel turned. A young man in a flower-streaked apron came rushing out. "You're the guy that came in with the little girl last week?" Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Depends who's asking." The man grinned. "Maya left something for your daughter. Said if you ever came back, I should give it to you." He reached under the counter and pulled out a small envelope with Ava written in neat, loopy handwriting. Daniel took it carefully and crouched down beside Ava. "It's for you." Ava opened the envelope with delicate fingers. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a charm bracelet with tiny animal pendants, an elephant, a rabbit, a cat. The note read, "To Ava, in case you need a hug and I'm not around. Every charm means someone loves you. Hold tight. Love, Maya." Ava's eyes welled up instantly. She hugged the bracelet to her chest. "Can we go find her now?" Daniel looked up at the young man. "Do you know where she lives?" The boy hesitated. I think she's taking care of her mom. Lives off Jefferson Street, near the old park. Small duplex. Blue door. I can't say for sure she's private, but I know she's been working 2 jobs. Daniel stood slowly, his mind already made up. "Come on, Ava," he said quietly. "Let's go for another drive." They left the diner behind, but Daniel wasn't just driving toward Jefferson Street. He was driving toward something he hadn't faced in years. The humility to ask forgiveness. The tires hummed softly over the uneven pavement as Daniel guided the Escalade down Jefferson Street. It was the kind of neighborhood where tree roots buckled sidewalks and faded porch swings creaked in the wind. Not dangerous, but weathered like the people who lived there had learned to make do, not complain. He drove slowly, scanning house numbers while Ava sat quietly in the back seat, clutching her charm bracelet in one hand and her stuffed bunny in the other. "There," Ava said suddenly, pointing. Daniel followed her gaze. A small duplex with peeling blue paint and a crooked mailbox sat near the corner. The door had a faded wreath on it, probably handmade. A rusted bicycle leaned against the porch railing. On the steps, a pair of sneakers and a pink watering can. It didn't scream anything special, but Ava's face lit up. Daniel pulled over and parked. He hesitated. He had closed million-dollar deals, addressed auditoriums of investors, faced federal regulators, but right now, he felt like a schoolboy showing up unannounced at the wrong classroom. He stepped out and opened Ava's door. "You sure?" he asked gently. She nodded. "She smells like cookies." They walked up the porch steps together. Ava held his hand tighter than usual. He knocked. There was a pause, a shuffle inside. Then the door creaked open. Maya stood in the doorway, dressed in a plain gray sweatshirt and jeans. Her hair was tied up, her expression tired but clear. She froze when she saw them. Ava was the first to speak. "I brought your bracelet," she said, holding up her wrist. "Thank you." Maya blinked, clearly surprised. "You got my note?" "Yes," Ava said, "and Daddy said we could come see you." Maya's eyes flicked to Daniel. He cleared his throat. "We were, in the neighborhood." She raised an eyebrow. "Really?" A beat of silence passed. "No," he admitted, "we weren't." A breath of something close to amusement passed through her, barely noticeable. She stepped aside. "You might as well come in, I was making tea." Daniel hesitated for half a second, then nodded and stepped inside. The house was modest, neat, but lived in. A scent of lavender and chamomile filled the air. Family photos lined one wall. In the corner, an oxygen tank stood beside a recliner. Daniel noticed the medical papers on the coffee table and the dull beeping of a portable heart monitor nearby. "She's sleeping," Maya said softly, nodding toward a back room. "My mother," Ava whispered. "Is she very sick?" Maya crouched to her level. "She has heart failure. Some days are better than others." Ava reached out, tiny fingers brushing Maya's arm. "My mommy went to heaven." "I know," Maya said. Her voice didn't falter, but her eyes glistened. "And I bet she was amazing." "She smelled like flowers," Ava said. Maya smiled. "That's a beautiful smell." Daniel watched this exchange, emotion tightening in his chest. There was no script, no effort, just a connection one he'd failed to create himself. They sat around a small table in the kitchen, chipped in places, but warm in atmosphere. Maya poured tea. Ava got cocoa with marshmallows. Daniel took his mug in silence. "I wanted to apologize again," he said, properly and face to face. Maya stirred her tea. "You already did that on the sidewalk." "I mean it now more than ever." Maya glanced at him. "I know you do," he exhaled. "I've been ashamed of how I handled everything. I acted out of fear, anger, pride. But Ava's been different since that day. Lighter, I think. I think you gave her something I didn't know how to give." "I didn't give her anything," Maya said softly. "I just didn't run away from her sadness." Daniel looked down at his mug. Her words sank deeper than he expected. He spoke again, quieter now. "You were bleeding, and you still apologized. I've been through worse." "That's not an excuse." "No, it's not," Maya agreed. "But people like me, we don't get second chances. If we cry foul, we're loud. If we speak up, we're angry. I've learned to survive by staying quiet." Daniel flinched inwardly. "I was taught that silence buys safety," she continued, "even when it hurts." He looked at her, really looked. "Maya, would you ever consider working with children again?" She blinked. "Why?" "Because Ava hasn't laughed like that in a long time, and I can't ignore the effect you've had on her." Maya's expression shifted, part caution, part curiosity. "You mean, like a nanny?" Daniel nodded. "Not out of pity, not as a handout, but as someone I trust, with my daughter." She paused. "You trust me?" "I didn't before, but I was wrong." Maya bit her lip, uncertain. "I have shifts. My mother still needs care. I can't just—" "I'll take care of the logistics," Daniel said. "Pay, schedule, benefits, medical for your mom too." She stared at him. "I'm not offering charity," he clarified. "I'm offering a role you're uniquely qualified for. You didn't ask to be pulled into our lives, but you were the only one who saw my daughter. Not just her name or her last name, her pain." "Lee." Maya was quiet. "I'll give you time to think," Daniel said, standing. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a card. "Here's my direct number. No assistants, no gatekeepers." She took it hesitantly. Ava walked over and hugged Maya's waist. "I like your house," she said softly. "Thank you, baby," Maya whispered, resting a hand on her head. Daniel watched for another moment. Then, with a quiet nod, he took Ava's hand. "We'll be in touch," he said, and opened the door. Maya stood at the threshold as they walked down the porch steps. The sunlight cast long shadows behind them. She held the business card like it was heavier than it looked. Inside, her mother stirred in the back room. Outside, Daniel didn't speak until they were back in the car. "Do you want her to come live with us?" he asked. Ava clutched her bunny. No, she said. I want her to come help us. Daniel looked ahead, the wheels already turning, and for the first time in a long time he felt like maybe, just maybe, they were heading in the right direction. 2 days passed before Maya called. Daniel had waited, though he hadn't realized how much until he heard the phone vibrate beside his desk. He'd been in a meeting with 2 department heads, discussing overseas manufacturing costs, but the moment he saw her name flash across the screen, he stood up. "Excuse me," he said abruptly, leaving the room without another word. He answered as he stepped into the hallway. "Maya?" Her voice came through, soft but steady. "I've thought about your offer." Daniel swallowed. "And I want to say yes," she said. "But I have conditions." That made him pause, then smile. "Go on." "I won't live in," Maya began. "I'll commute. I need to care for my mother every morning and evening." "Done. I won't work Sundays. That's the only day I get to sit with her at church." "Understood." I want a written contract, not a handshake. I need things to be clear." Daniel nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I'll have one drawn up by Monday." She hesitated, then added, "I won't tolerate being treated like I'm invisible." Daniel's voice dropped. "You have my word, Maya. That'll never happen again." There was a pause on the other end. Then, "All right, then I'll start on Tuesday." Daniel exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders releasing. "Thank you." "Nah." He could almost hear her half smile. "Don't thank me yet." Tuesday morning arrived like the first day of school. Ava sat on the staircase, brushing her bunny's ears with a soft bristled toothbrush. She was already dressed and had insisted on wearing her pink overalls, the ones with the heart patch on the knee. "Is she coming today?" Ava asked for the 3rd time. "Yes," Daniel said from the kitchen. "She'll be here by 9. "Oh." When the doorbell finally rang, Ava flew to the foyer like a hummingbird. Daniel opened the door just in time to see his daughter throw her arms around Maya's waist. Maya laughed softly. "Hi, sunshine." Daniel stood back, watching the exchange. Maya looked different this time, not just because she wore pressed jeans and a clean jacket, but because her posture had changed. She was standing taller, confident. "Morning, Mr. Reed," she said. "Daniel, please." She gave him a polite nod. Daniel. Elena, the longtime housekeeper, peered cautiously from the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a towel. Daniel turned to her. "Elena, this is Maya William. She'll be joining us as Ava's companion." Elena's brows lifted slightly. "Nice to meet you." Maya smiled warmly. "Likewise." The formalities over, Ava tugged at Maya's hand. "Come see my reading nook." Daniel watched them walk down the hallway, Ava chatting animatedly, Maya listening with full attention. He didn't remember the last time Ava had been that animated before noon. The hours passed quietly. Daniel remained home that morning, working from his study, but occasionally stepping into the hallway to listen. He heard giggles. Reading. Ava's voice rising in excitement, followed by Maya's gentle laughter. Around noon, Maya knocked lightly on his office door. A looked up. "Come in." She stepped inside, holding a drawing in one hand. "Ava made this for you." He reached for it. A crayon sketch of their house, complete with crooked windows, stick figures labeled Daddy and Me, and one more taller, with long brown hair. "Maya," it said underneath, written in uneven block letters. "She wanted you to hang it in your office," Maya said. Daniel smiled faintly. "I'll frame it." Maya hesitated. "She asked me something earlier, about her mother." Daniel straightened. "What did she say?" "She asked if her mom could see her now, if she was proud of her." "Huh." Daniel's face darkened slightly. "What did you tell her?" "I said I thought her mother would be very proud, and I reminded her that memories don't leave just because people do." Daniel nodded slowly. "Thank you." Maya glanced around the office. "Your wife, was she sick?" "No," Daniel said after a beat. "Car accident, 3 years ago." "I'm sorry." "She was on her way to pick Ava up from ballet," he continued quietly. "Ava still doesn't like the sound of screeching tires." "Ugh." Maya stepped closer. "She doesn't need words for that kind of pain. She carries it in her eyes." Daniel didn't reply, but something in him shifted again. Trust, perhaps. Or maybe humility. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Maya prepared to leave. Ava hugged her tightly at the door. Will you come back tomorrow? The girl asked. I will, Maya promised. Daniel opened the door for her. As she stepped onto the porch, he said quietly, You handled her questions better than I ever could. Maya looked at him. Sometimes it's easier when it's not your own pain. He watched her walk down the path, her shadow long in the soft light. When he returned inside, Ava had fallen asleep on the couch, her bunny beside her, the charm bracelet wrapped gently around its neck. Daniel stood over her for a long time, then bent and kissed her forehead, something he hadn't done in months. She stirred slightly but didn't wake, and Daniel realized something. He hadn't just hired Maya for Ava, he'd let her in for both of them. The house felt different. Daniel couldn't explain it, not in metrics or spreadsheets, but it was real. He noticed it first in the little things: Ava singing to herself while brushing her teeth, her giggles echoing down the hallways, the way sunlight seemed to rest softer on the hardwood floors. Maya had only been working there for a week, but her presence had begun to carve out a space not just in Ava's world, but in Daniel's as well. And for the first time in 3 years, the mansion didn't feel like a mausoleum. On Friday evening, as the sun began to set over Beacon Hill, Daniel returned home early, briefcase in hand and mind still buzzing from the day's negotiations. He entered through the side door and caught a familiar scent in the air. Vanilla. Cookies. He walked toward the kitchen. There, at the marble island, stood Maya, flower on her cheek, apron tied around her waist, guiding Ava through rolling cookie dough. The little girl stood on a stool, her hands covered in batter, her laughter bouncing off the cabinets. You're getting it on your nose, Maya teased. No, I'm not, Ava grinned, dabbing flour onto Maya's sleeve. Daniel paused, watching the scene from the doorway. He hadn't seen Ava like this since before loss had stolen her childhood and grief had filled the silence between them. Ava spotted him first. Daddy. Maya turned quickly, suddenly aware of the flour on her face. Sorry, we kind of took over your kitchen. Daniel walked in slowly. Looks like a hostile sugar invasion. Ava giggled. We're baking cookies for Mommy's Day. He raised an eyebrow. You mean Mother's Day? No, Ava said. Mommy's Day. I made it up. For just us. Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at Maya, who gave him a small, understanding smile. I thought it was a beautiful idea, she said. A way to remember her. Daniel nodded, clearing his throat. It is. Ava held up a lumpy cookie in the shape of a heart. This one's yours, but it's kinda squishy. Daniel took it like a sacred object. It's perfect. They ate together that evening, cookies and milk at the dining table. Something so simple, yet so rare in the Reed household. After Ava went to bed, Maya helped clear the table. Daniel stood beside her at the sink, rinsing the plates while she dried them. You're settling in, he said, glancing at her. I try not to get too comfortable, she replied softly. I've learned comfort can be temporary. Daniel dried his hands. It doesn't have to be. Maya gave him a cautious look. You say that now? I say that because it's true. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. Instead, she reached for a stray cookie from the cooling rack and offered it to him. Peace offering, she said. Daniel chuckled. From what? You won that flower war hands down. No. They both laughed, an unexpected, shared sound that softened the space between them. Then came a knock at the door. Daniel frowned. At this hour, he crossed the foyer and opened the front door. A tall woman in a blazer stood outside, flanked by 2 suited men. She held a leather briefcase and an official-looking badge clipped to her belt. Mr. Daniel Ride? Yes, I'm Susan Thorne, from the Massachusetts Department of Child Welfare. Daniel's stomach dropped. We received an anonymous report concerning your daughter's emotional well-being, she continued. We're here to follow up with a wellness visit. Maya appeared behind him, drying her hands on a towel. Her expression shifted instantly: concern, then fear. Ava's voice rang out from upstairs. Daddy? Daniel stepped forward protectively. There's been some mistake. I'm sure you believe that, Susan replied calmly, but we'll still need to speak with Ava, and with any adult caregivers in the home. Maya looked at him, eyes wide. Daniel nodded once. Come in. 20 minutes later, Ava sat on the couch, legs swinging, holding her bunny tightly. Susan spoke gently, asking questions about her routines, her feelings, school, and friends. Ava answered with the shy honesty of a 5-year-old. Yes, I miss Mommy. No, Daddy doesn't yell. Not anymore. Yes, Maya is nice. She smells like cookies. In the kitchen, Daniel sat with one of the agents, going over family records and recent changes in Ava's care. Maya sat at the far end of the counter, clutching the towel still. When Susan finally returned, she looked thoughtful. There's no indication of neglect or abuse, she said carefully. Ava seems emotionally sensitive, but stable. The recent addition of a companion appears to be helping. Daniel narrowed his eyes. So, why the report? Susan exchanged a look with her colleague. The file mentioned concerns about a strange woman of unknown background interacting with your daughter. It's possible someone saw Maya and misunderstood her role. Maya stiffened. Daniel's voice dropped to a cold edge. Or they saw a black woman with my child and assumed the worst. Susan didn't respond directly. We'll be closing the case with no further action, she said. But I'd suggest documenting all care arrangements going forward. She handed Daniel a card. If you receive any more visits or questions, contact me directly. They left. Silence filled the house. Maya finally spoke. I knew this would happen. Daniel turned to her. It shouldn't have. But it does, she said quietly. This is what I mean when I say I can't get comfortable. Daniel walked toward her slowly. You didn't do anything wrong. That's not always enough, Maya whispered. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her arm. You're not going anywhere. Not unless you choose to. Her eyes searched his face for signs of doubt. There were none. She nodded slowly. Then we fight it. Together. Daniel gave a faint smile. Deal. And for the first time, not just in words but in truth, she belonged. It was just after dawn when Maya stepped into the kitchen the next morning. She moved quietly, not wanting to wake anyone, her sneakers making soft taps on the stone floor. The house was still too still, and despite Daniel's words the night before, something in her gut hadn't settled. She moved by habit. Water in the kettle, mug on the counter. She reached into the cupboard for the tea bags Daniel had started keeping stocked, just for her chamomile and peppermint. Simple kindnesses. The kinds that said more than grand gestures. But as she stirred the tea, a different kind of warmth crept up the back of her neck. She was being watched. She turned slowly and froze. Elena stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. Maya straightened. Good morning. Elena said nothing at first. Then, you comfortable here? The words weren't sharp, but they weren't soft either. Maya chose her next ones carefully. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Elena muttered, stepping into the room. She began wiping down the spotless countertop, unnecessarily. Maya set her mug aside. Is there something you'd like to say? The older woman looked up. I've worked for this family since before Ava was born, before the missus passed, before you. Maya nodded. I understand. Do you? Elena leaned on the counter now, her eyes narrowing just slightly. Because from where I'm standing, it seems you've come in very fast. The girl's attached to you. The man listens to you. And now child services is knocking on the door. That's a lot of drama for 1 week. No, Maya's chest tightened. That wasn't my doing. No, maybe not, Elena said. But you've stirred the pot. And not everyone in this house drinks tea the way you do. The comment hung in the air bitter, not bold. Maya straightened. With all due respect, I'm here because Ava needs consistency. Not because I'm trying to replace anyone. Elena's jaw twitched. Just remember, consistency can be a threat too. Especially to those of us who've been consistent for years. Then she walked out. Maya stood still, fingers gripping the edge of the counter. So it begins. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his study, his fingers drumming against his knee. He'd barely slept. He'd spent half the night replaying the visit from child welfare. Not because they'd found anything wrong, he knew they wouldn't, but because someone had made the call. Someone who wanted Maya gone. He opened his laptop, typed in a few commands, and pulled up the home security system archives. The cameras captured everything from the gate to the foyer to the side entrance where deliveries came in. He fast-forwarded through the footage from the past week. He wasn't even sure what he was looking for until he saw it. 2 days before the visit, around 4:13 p.m. Elena. She stepped outside to take a call. She looked around first twice, then answered, speaking for a full minute and a half. No audio, but her face was tense, serious. He played it again, once more. Then he closed the laptop. Later that morning, Maya took Ava to the library room for story time. Sunlight poured through the tall windows. Books lined the walls. Ava settled into her beanbag chair with her bunny and a bowl of grapes. "I want the giraffe book," she said, pointing. Maya smiled. "Good choice." They were halfway through the story when Daniel knocked on the open door. Maya looked up. Ava waved him in. "Daddy, Maya does all the voices." Daniel smiled at his daughter. "I can tell." He waited until Ava was fully engrossed again, then motioned for Maya to step outside with him. In the hallway, his voice dropped. "We need to talk." Maya tensed. "Did something happen?" Daniel crossed his arms. "I watched the footage." She blinked. "Footage?" "Security cameras," he said. "I saw Elena make a call 2 days before child welfare showed up." Maya's heart sank. "You think it was her?" "I know it was," he said. "Her timing, her tone, it all lines up." "No." Maya looked down. "That explains this morning." "What happened?" "She confronted me. Nothing loud, but not subtle." Daniel frowned. "You don't need to tolerate that." "She's grieving," Maya said softly. "In her way. She's been here a long time. I'm a disruption." "You're not a disruption," Daniel said firmly. "You're what this house needed." Maya shook her head. "It's not just about you and Ava anymore. I'm not looking to cause divides." Daniel's voice softened. "You're not. But the truth always divides, Maya. And the truth is Ava is better because of you." She met his eyes. "What do you want to do?" "I'll talk to Elena. But I want to offer you something else too." She braced herself. "I want you to have full authority over Ava's daily routine. School, meals, reading, outings, everything." Maya blinked. "That's a lot of trust." "I know." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right." Daniel took a step closer. "One more thing." "Yes?" He paused. "Would you have dinner with us tonight?" Maya raised a brow. "Ava and me?" "No, all 3 of us." She looked at him for a long moment. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but I want to try." Maya finally smiled. "Then I'll be there." That evening, the dining room table was set with white candles, cloth napkins, and a glass vase of tulips from the garden. The room smelled of roasted chicken and thyme. Maya arrived wearing a navy blue blouse, her hair down, her smile gentle. Daniel, in his crisp dress shirt, pulled out a chair for her. Ava beamed across the table. "I picked the flowers," she announced. Maya touched the vase. "They're beautiful." Dinner was simple, but full of laughter. Ava recited the giraffe story by memory. Daniel told a story from his college days that made Ava squeal with laughter. Maya shared how she used to sneak books from the library as a girl because her mother couldn't afford to buy them. By dessert, the mood was light, almost normal. Then Elena entered with the fruit tarts. She paused when she saw Maya at the table. Daniel caught the tension instantly. "Elena, thank you. You're free for the evening." Elena's expression flickered. "Of course, sir." She left without a word. Maya glanced at Daniel. He shook his head once. "Not tonight." Tonight, they'd built something rare. Trust. At the table, between forkfuls of tart and the soft hum of laughter, something unspoken had shifted again. And though the world outside still whispered, for this one evening, they belonged. It was nearly midnight when the phone rang. Daniel was in his study, reviewing a contract for a property expansion deal in Seattle, but he was barely focused. The image of Maya's laughter during dinner still lingered in his mind unforced, warm, like music he didn't realize he missed. Ava had fallen asleep in Maya's lap before dessert ended, and Maya had carried her up the stairs without hesitation, as if she'd belonged to her since birth. He'd watched it all unfold from his seat, the realization dawning slowly. This wasn't just working, it was healing. The phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. A good instinct made him answer. "Hello? Is this Mr. Daniel Reed?" the voice asked. Male hurried, professional. "Yes. Who is this?" "This is Dr. Harrison Grant. I'm calling from Brigham and Women's Hospital. I have Maya Williams' mother here, Mrs. Lila William. She collapsed earlier this evening. Maya listed you as an emergency contact." Daniel stood up so quickly his chair nearly toppled. What happened? Severe arrhythmia. She went into cardiac arrest. Paramedics revived her en route. She's stable for now. But it's serious. Maya's on her way here by taxi. She didn't want Ava woken, which is why she listed you to help coordinate if needed. I'll be there in 15, Daniel said, already grabbing his coat. The air outside was crisp and biting as Daniel drove through the sleeping city. His fingers gripped the wheel tighter than necessary, adrenaline buzzing beneath his skin. He hadn't even changed out of his dress shirt. It wasn't until he pulled into the hospital lot that he realized something. Maya had trusted him, not just with Ava, but with her world. He jogged through the entrance, past the buzzing fluorescent lights and antiseptic air, toward the emergency department. Maya William? He asked the nurse at the desk. The nurse pointed down the corridor. Daniel turned the corner and saw her. Maya sat alone on a stiff plastic bench, elbows on her knees, hands covering her face. Her jacket had fallen off one shoulder. Her shoes were untied, and her eyes, when she finally looked up, were red and full of fear. He sat beside her without a word. She's in the ICU, Maya said, her voice brittle. They've stabilized her, but it's not good. Daniel placed a hand on her back. She didn't flinch. I should have been home earlier, she whispered. She didn't say anything. Just went to bed early. I thought she was tired, but then I heard the thud. It's not your fault, Daniel said firmly. Maya shook her head. I always think I have more time. With everything. With her. With life. Daniel didn't know how to respond. So he didn't. He just sat there, beside her, present. After a long silence, she asked, Did I do the wrong thing putting you as emergency contact? He turned toward her. No. You did the right thing. She wiped her eyes with the edge of her sleeve. You should be home. With Ava. She's safe. Elena's there. I left a note in case she wakes. Maya gave a bitter laugh. Elena probably loved that. Daniel smiled faintly. She'll manage. Just then, a nurse appeared. Miss William? You can come back now. She's awake. Maya stood slowly. Daniel stood too. The nurse glanced at him. Are you family? No, Daniel said, then paused. But I'm staying. Maya looked at him, surprised. Then, slowly, she nodded. Come with me. The ICU was a world unto itself, dim lights, hushed tones, machines beeping in slow, steady rhythm. Lila William lay on the bed, pale and fragile, her silver hair matted slightly on one side. Tubes ran from her arms. A heart monitor blinked quietly. Maya stepped closer. Hi, Mama, she whispered. Lila stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Maya, she breathed. I'm here, Maya said, leaning close. You scared me. You're always scared, Lila murmured, managing a weak smile. Even when you were little. Maya chuckled through her tears. Still am. Lila's gaze shifted to Daniel. And you are? Daniel stepped forward. A friend. Lila squinted, then nodded faintly. Well, you're tall for a friend. That made both Maya and Daniel laugh genuine, surprised, grateful laughter. Lila looked at her daughter again. I'm not ready, you know. I know, Maya said. But if I have to go, I'm proud of you. Maya swallowed hard. You're not going anywhere. 0. Lila's eyes drifted closed, the medications lulling her back to rest. Maya turned toward Daniel, her face unreadable. He offered, I'll wait out here. But she caught his wrist gently. No, stay. Had did. They sat outside the ICU until dawn, sharing stories. Maya told him about her childhood in New Orleans, how her mom used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, how they scraped through bills with borrowed grace. Daniel, in turn, spoke of boarding school loneliness, of corporate fathers and cold dinner tables, of a wife he'd loved and lost too soon. It wasn't romantic. It was something deeper. Human. At 6:30 Maya's phone buzzed. Ava, Daniel answered gently. Hey, champ. Where's Maya? Came the sleepy voice. She's with her mom at the hospital. Everything's okay now. A pause. Can I draw a picture for her? Daniel smiled. She'd love that. Maya took the phone. I miss you, sweetheart. I miss you too, Ava whispered. Are you coming home? Maya glanced at Daniel. surprised by the word. Home. I'll be back soon, she said. Promise. After the call ended, Daniel stood. I'll have my driver bring you breakfast later. And I'll make sure someone delivers clothes. You don't have to. I want to. Maya gave a tired nod. Okay. Daniel turned to leave, but paused at the door. Last night, when you called me family, he said quietly. Thank you. Maya looked down at her hands. Maybe I was scared too. You're not alone, Maya, he said. Not anymore. And then he was gone. But his words stayed. 3 days had passed since Lila's heart attack. Maya split her time between the hospital and the Reed household, walking a line between exhaustion and necessity. Her mother was stable now, still fragile, but no longer hovering near the edge. That knowledge gave Maya just enough strength to keep going, but barely. Danielle noticed. He didn't hover, but he checked in. A bottle of her favorite tea showed up on the kitchen counter. A small basket of snacks, healthy ones, not junk, appeared in her car's passenger seat when she wasn't looking. Even Ava began wrapping her little arms around Maya's waist more often, sensing something fragile in her protector's silence. But peace, Maya had learned, was always rented, never owned. And by Friday morning, the balance tipped again. She was cleaning up Ava's breakfast plate when Elena entered, holding a sealed white envelope. This came for you, Elena said, voice tight. Maya took it, wiping her hands on a towel. Thanks. As she opened it, Elena didn't move. Maya scanned the contents, her hands stilled. It was an anonymous letter, typed, no return address, no signature, just one short paragraph. Your presence in that house is inappropriate. You're not family. You're not blood. You're a hired woman, nothing more. Leave before someone makes you. Maya's breath caught in her chest. She looked up at Elena, who was still watching her. Waiting. Not surprised. Did you see who brought this? Elena shrugged. Left in the mailbox. Could have been anyone. Maya studied her, trying to read what wasn't said. Elena looked away first. Daniel was reviewing quarterly reports in his study when Maya entered without knocking. Her face was pale, letter in hand. I got this morning. He set his pen down, took the paper, read it once, then again. The temperature in the room dropped. Where did this come from? He asked tightly. Mailbox. No name. Elena gave it to me. Daniel's jaw clenched. I'll handle it. Maya stepped closer. Before you go charging in, listen to me. He paused. I don't want this to become a witch hunt. I don't want drama. But I do want clarity. Daniel met her eyes. You shouldn't be threatened in my home. Though, and yet I was, she said, voice low. And I want to know if you're willing to protect me. Even when it's not convenient. The words hit harder than any letter. He stood. I'm not going to pretend this house doesn't carry ghosts, Maya. Or that race doesn't still move beneath the floorboards of people's hearts. But I won't allow intimidation to decide who belongs. She swallowed. Good, because I won't be scared out of a place I've earned. Oh. Daniel looked at the letter again, then folded it in half. I'm going to install a mailbox camera, review every visitor log, and speak to Elena directly. Maya nodded. Just, don't fire her, not yet. Daniel raised a brow. Why not? Because firing her won't change her. It'll only prove her right that we're replaceable. Not worth understanding. Daniel studied her. You always take the harder road. I was raised to survive. That's always harder. That afternoon, Daniel called Elena into the sunroom. Maya wasn't present by her own request. The conversation was brief, controlled. Elena, Daniel began. You've worked here for years. You know Ava's routines better than anyone. And I've trusted you with this house more times than I can count. Yes, sir, she replied, standing with perfect posture. I also know you're unhappy about Maya being here. Elena blinked, not denying it. Daniel continued. I understand loyalty. I understand grief. But I won't tolerate hostility toward Maya in my home. That includes veiled comments, intentional coldness, or passive aggression. If it continues, I will replace you. Not because of race, not because of politics, because of conduct. Elena's jaw tightened. She doesn't belong in this family. She belongs to Ava now, Daniel said, his voice icy. And that's enough for me. Elena opened her mouth, then thought better of it. She turned and walked out, her shoes silent against the tile. Daniel leaned against the doorway once she was gone, exhaling deeply. That night, Ava had a nightmare. Maya rushed to her room before Daniel could even get out of bed. She found the little girl curled up, sobbing, whispering something Maya couldn't understand. She climbed into bed beside her, holding her close. "It's okay, sweet girl," Maya murmured. "You're safe." Ava whimpered. "There was a lady. She was yelling. She said you had to go away." Maya stiffened. Daniel, standing silently in the doorway, had heard every word. "She was just a dream," Maya whispered. "She can't touch us here." Ava nodded against her chest. Daniel walked over, gently brushing Ava's curls from her forehead. "I'm sorry," he said, more to Maya than to the child. "This house still echoes things it shouldn't." Maya didn't answer, but when she looked at him, he knew. She wasn't afraid anymore. The next morning, Maya found a note taped to the inside of the fridge door. It wasn't anonymous. It was from Daniel. "You belong here. Anyone who can't see that can leave, including me. D." It wasn't signed with Daniel Reed, just D, like a friend, a partner, a protector. She pressed the note to her chest for a long time. And that morning, for the first time since she'd stepped into this house, Maya made breakfast for everyone. Eben Elena. Sunday mornings in the Reed household were usually quiet, reserved for soft jazz on the kitchen radio and the occasional click of Ava's crayons across her art table. Daniel didn't take calls. He didn't read emails. He didn't wear a watch. It was the one day of the week when the world didn't demand his attention and he didn't offer it. But this Sunday was different. The silence carried weight, like the house itself was holding its breath. Maya arrived earlier than usual, still wearing her modest navy blue church dress. She smelled faintly of almond oil and lavender, and her heels clicked gently on the foyer tile. Daniel met her at the door, coffee in one hand, concern in his eyes. "How's your mom this morning?" "Resting," Maya said. "She asked me if I've started praying again." Daniel raised a brow. "Have you?" "I've started listening," she answered. "Sometimes that's the first step." He gestured toward the kitchen. "Ava's making something sticky. I think it's art. Or breakfast. Maybe both." Maya laughed lightly and walked in, only to be greeted by Ava standing proudly on a chair, holding a paper plate with what looked like a face made out of fruit. "It's us," Ava grinned. "Me, you, and Daddy. See?" Maya looked down. A strawberry for her hair, a banana peel for Daniel's smile, Ava's curly hair drawn in blue marker. "It's beautiful, baby," Maya whispered. Daniel walked in behind her, saw the plate, and gave a soft chuckle. "Is that supposed to be my nose or a mushroom?" "It's a banana," Ava shouted, clearly insulted. They ate breakfast together at the island. Daniel even offered to do dishes, which Maya kindly declined. Ava danced in the living room, spinning circles to Louis Armstrong's trumpet from the old Bluetooth speaker Daniel had once considered tossing. It could have been a perfect morning, until the knock on the door. Not a doorbell, a knock, slow, deliberate. Daniel frowned and approached, pulling open the large oak door. A man in a dark suit and sunglasses stood there. Mid-40s. Clean-shaven, sharp jawline, government-type posture. "Mr. Reed?" "Yes?" The man flashed a badge. "Special Agent Caleb Morris, Federal Bureau of Investigation." Daniel blinked. "Excuse me? I'm here to speak with you, privately, if possible." Daniel's gut tightened. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "What's this about?" Morris lowered his voice. "It's regarding Maya William." Daniel's spine straightened. "What about her?" Morris pulled a small tablet from his coat and showed Daniel a still frame Maya entering the hospital last week. Her face was pale, her arm around a nurse. Daniel remembered that moment clearly. "She was flagged," Morris said. An open background check showed inconsistencies. Specifically, sealed juvenile records. Daniel's voice dropped to a growl. "Is she in trouble?" Morris didn't blink. "Not yet. But we're reopening certain cases tied to a church-run foster home in New Orleans. Abuse, disappearances, a fire that destroyed records, and one girl who survived everything." Daniel looked at the image again. "Maya, she's not the subject," Morris continued. "She's a witness, maybe more, but someone's been looking for her, someone dangerous." Daniel's jaw clenched. Why come here? Because she's finally settled. And people like that? They only come out of hiding when they think they're safe. Morris slipped the tablet back into his coat. I'm not here to arrest her, he said, but she needs to talk, voluntarily, before someone else finds her first. Daniel nodded slowly. I'll tell her. Morris handed him a card. She can call any time, but time is running out. When Daniel returned inside, Maya was humming with Ava on the couch, braiding the girl's curls gently as they watched a cartoon. She looked up at him, immediately sensing the shift in his energy. What's wrong? He looked at Ava, then gestured toward the sunroom. Maya followed, her hands twisting together nervously. Daniel shut the doors. A man came today, he began. FBI. Her face paled. What? Your past, Maya. Your juvenile records. A burned-down home. A church? Maya staggered backward slightly, eyes wide. He said you're not in trouble, but someone's looking for you. Someone dangerous. She sat down slowly on the edge of the leather chair, her hands trembling. His name was Caleb Morris, Daniel added, offering the card. He wants to help, but he says we're running out of time. Maya didn't take the card. Instead, she looked up at him with tear-glossed eyes. I never told anyone, not even my mother. Daniel sat beside her. Tell me now. She swallowed hard. I was 11. My mom was working 3 jobs. I ended up in a church group home, St. Catherine's. They said they'd care for me. They didn't. She paused, her fingers locking together tightly. There were nights. I slept with shoes on, just in case I had to run. And I did. The night the fire started, one of the older girls snapped. I don't know how. I just remember the smoke, screaming, and then silence. Daniel's voice was low. You survived. I escaped, Maya said. Barefoot. Covered in soot. I walked 6 miles back to my mom. She pulled me into her arms and said we'd never talk about it again. So we didn't. Not once. Daniel placed a hand over hers. You don't have to run anymore. Her shoulders trembled. I thought if I stayed quiet, I'd be safe. I thought disappearing would protect us. Daniel gently lifted her chin. You're not disappearing anymore. You're here. With us. Maya blinked away the tears. I don't want Ava to know. Not yet. She won't, Daniel said. Not until you're ready. Oh. There was a knock at the sunroom door. Ava peeked in. Can we go to the park, Maya? Maya wiped her face quickly, smiled. Of course, sweetheart. Daniel stood up, offering a hand to Maya. We'll walk together, he said. Both of you. Maya took his hand, and for the first time in years, she walked toward the sunlight, not away from it. The park was unusually quiet that afternoon. It wasn't the absence of people, it was the hush in the air, like the city itself had slowed to catch its breath. Children played in the distance. A couple walked a golden retriever under the turning leaves. The sky was an autumn blue, vast and gentle. Daniel, Maya, and Ava sat together on a blanket beneath a large oak tree. The breeze tugged gently at Ava's curls as she sat cross-legged, arranging dandelions into an imaginary bouquet. Maya watched her, one hand in the grass, the other fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. She hadn't said much since they left the house. Daniel respected the silence. It wasn't avoidance, it was her armor cracking. What do you remember most? He asked softly, eyes still on Ava. Maya didn't need context. She knew he meant St. Catherine's. She sighed. There was a chapel on the top floor. It had a stained glass window of St. Michael. Sword drawn. Wings spread. Daniel nodded. I used to stare at it for hours, she said. Not because I believed in angels, but because I wanted to believe someone could fight for me. That one day, someone would. Daniel turned to her. You fought for yourself. She met his eyes. I was 11, and you're still standing, he said. Maya looked down at her lap. Until someone knocks again. You're not alone this time. She hesitated, then said, I didn't expect to survive that fire, but I did, and surviving comes with shadows. Oh, he nodded. So does grief. So does parenting. So does rebuilding. They sat in quiet understanding. Ava brought them each a flower made of leaves and twigs. One for each of you, she said, proud. Thank you, baby, Maya whispered, her voice thick. Daniel tucked the stem behind his ear like a crown. Ava giggled and clapped. Maya smiled, real and tired. But then, from the corner of her eye, she saw something. A man. Leaning against a lamppost across the street. Too still. Watching. He was tall, wearing a faded gray coat and sunglasses despite the shade. Maya stiffened. Daniel noticed instantly. "What is it?" She didn't speak, just gestured subtly. Daniel followed her line of sight. The man didn't move. "I've seen him before," Maya said quietly. "Outside the hospital. I thought I was imagining it." Daniel rose slowly. "Stay here." "No, Daniel." He was already walking. Across the grass. Across the street. Determined. But when he reached the lamppost, the man was gone. Daniel scanned the sidewalk. Nothing but passing cars and fallen leaves. He returned, jaw tight. He vanished. Maya stood hugging herself. "He's real." Daniel looked at her seriously. "I believe you." She paced, suddenly breathless. "I should have gone to the FBI the moment they called. I waited. I waited because I didn't want to drag you into this. Or Ava. Or..." He placed both hands on her shoulders. "You didn't drag us into anything. We're already in this. Together." She looked at him, helpless. Daniel pulled out his phone. "We're calling Morris." Now. An hour later, Agent Caleb Morris sat in the sunroom of the Reed estate, his demeanor as calm as before, but this time, his voice had urgency beneath its surface. "You saw him again?" he asked Maya. "Yes. Coat. Sunglasses. He was watching us." "Can you describe him more specifically?" Maya closed her eyes. Mid-40s. Light skin, maybe scar under the left eye. "He had a slight limp." "I think yes. Definitely a limp." Morris wrote it all down. "That helps. We've been monitoring movement from several known associates of the former church director. You were right to call." Daniel folded his arms. "What does he want?" "Silence," Morris said simply. "The new investigation is peeling back 20 years of secrets. And Maya, you're the last thread. If you testify, it all unravels." Maya swallowed hard. "So he's here to keep me quiet." "Yes, but not just with fear, with shame, guilt, reminders of who you used to be. That's how they work." Daniel's yaff clenched. Maya said, "If I go on record, they'll come harder." Morris met her eyes. "They will, but we'll protect you. Witness protection, new name, relocation if needed." Maya flinched at the thought. "I don't want to leave Ava, or this house, or..." Daniel interrupted. "You won't." Maya looked at him, startled. "I won't let them take you," he said. "We'll find another way." Morris sighed. "There's risk either way. But I can assign an agent to stay nearby. We'll watch the property. Track activity. I can't promise safety, but I can promise vigilance." Maya nodded slowly. "Okay." Morris handed her a small voice recorder. "Start telling your story. Record it in pieces. When you're ready, we make it official." Maya took the device, her fingers trembling. "I'll try," she whispered. Daniel said gently, "Trying is brave." "No." That night, Maya sat on her bed, the recorder in her palm. She pressed record. "My name is Maya William," she began softly, "and I was 11 years old the night the fire started at St. Catherine's Church Home for Girls." She paused. "I wasn't the hero. I wasn't even the first to run, but I'm alive, and that has to mean something." She stopped the recording. Just a start. But it was enough. She slipped the recorder into her drawer and turned out the light. Across the hall, Ava slept peacefully, unaware of the world that had tried and failed to steal the woman who now guarded her like an angel with tired wings. Downstairs, Daniel sat in the dark study, staring at the surveillance feed from the front gate. Waiting, watching, ready. By Tuesday morning, the house no longer felt like a sanctuary, it felt like a fortress. One Daniel guarded more fiercely with each hour. Surveillance upgrades had been installed overnight. New motion sensors, pressure pads on the outer gates, and an updated security team with instructions to report any unknown presence within a 2-block radius. Still, unease hovered like humidity in the walls. Maya felt it most when Ava wasn't in the room. The little girl's presence had become her compass, her steady light. But even Ava had noticed the shift. Why does the house beep now when I open the back door? She asked that morning, tugging on Maya's sleeve as they made oatmeal together. Maya smiled, careful. Just a new helper to keep us safe. Ava paused. From the scary man? Maya stilled. Did you see him again? She asked gently. No, Ava said, returning to her bowl. But I think Daddy did. He talks more quietly now. Maya blinked, hiding the sting in her throat. Children always saw more than we thought. Yes, sweetheart, she whispered. Daddy's trying to keep us safe too. Ava nodded and added too much cinnamon to her bowl. Later that day, Maya stepped outside for air. The autumn breeze had begun turning cold, cutting through her sweater as she walked the garden path toward the greenhouse. She hadn't been there since the firelight sunset 2 weeks ago, the day Ava called her mommy by accident. The glass creaked as she opened the door. The scent of soil and lavender still lingered. The small plant Ava had named Captain Leaf stood proudly in a clay pot, its stem straight and strong. Maya gently touched its leaf and smiled despite herself. Maya? She turned. Daniel stood at the entrance, hands in his coat pockets. Didn't mean to interrupt. You're not, she said. Just needed quiet. He stepped in, ducking slightly beneath the frame. I have news, he said, his tone cautious, and I didn't want to tell you inside, with Ava around. Maya's breath caught. He handed her a folder. Inside were 2 printed photographs, grayscale security images from the outer perimeter camera. The man in the coat, captured near midnight, approaching the south fence. Maya's knees weakened slightly. He didn't breach, Daniel said quickly, but he's getting bolder. She stared at the image. I know him. Daniel looked at her. Who is he? His name's Thomas Rayner. He was a staff member at the home worked nights. The girls called him Mr. Tom. He said less than most, but he watched, always watched. Daniel's face darkened. He was never charged, Maya added, her voice tight. There were whispers, accusations, but no proof. Now we have this, Daniel said. And Agent Morris is working to match it to a known alias. The man travels under multiple names. Private security firms. Church-funded operations. Maya lowered the photos. He's not trying to kill me. Daniel blinked. What? He's trying to make me disappear, she whispered. Make me run, or doubt myself, or forget what I saw. It's cleaner that way. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand. You're not going anywhere, he said. You run, and they win. You stay, and we fight. Maya looked down at their hands, his larger, calloused from work and life. Hers smaller, but steady. How do you always sound so certain? She asked. I don't, Daniel said, but I've built too much of my life behind walls. I won't lose what matters because I hesitated. He hesitated now, then added, You matter, Maya. Her breath caught again, but before she could answer, a sharp crack echoed from the east side of the house. Gunshot. Daniel's instincts kicked in instantly. He pulled Maya down behind the greenhouse shelf, shielding her body with his own. Another crack, then silence. Sirens began to wail in the distance too fast to be coincidence. Daniel reached for his phone, pressing speed dial. Secure perimeter now, he barked. South and east zones. He turned to Maya, checking her eyes. Are you hit? No. Are you? No. They crouched there in silence for what felt like an eternity before Daniel's security lead, Troy, radioed in. Clear perimeter. 1 shot. No breach. Found a single shell casing on the gravel. Empty. Message. Message? Daniel snapped. It was lodged in a garden statue, Troy replied. Bullet embedded. It's engraved. Maya stared at Daniel in disbelief. Minutes later, they stood before the marble angel statue in the garden. A small bullet had been shot clean through the wing, precise, deliberate, and carved into its casing, as if etched by a razor, were the words, He who watches, waits. Maya turned away, stomach twisting. Daniel spoke quietly to his head of security. Double the patrols. I want eyes on every blind spot. Yes, sir. That evening, the police came and went. So did Morris. He took the casing into evidence and gave Maya another warning, but with it, more protection. You're not being stalked, he said. You're being challenged. And Maya knew what that meant. Someone wasn't afraid of the law. Someone was betting she would be. That night, Maya slept in Ava's room. The little girl had sensed the shift, even without the news. She clung to Maya's arm as they lay under the glow and the dark stars taped to her ceiling. "Do the bad men know you're brave?" Ava asked sleepily. "I hope so," Maya said. "But even if they don't, I know." Ava snuggled closer. "I think Daddy's brave too, but he looks at you like you're braver." Maya's heart ached. She kissed Ava's forehead. "Close your eyes, sweetheart," she whispered. Ava obeyed, but Maya didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling long after midnight, the words on the bullet repeating in her mind. "He who watches, waits." She didn't know how long she had, but she knew she wouldn't flinch. Not anymore. Rain came the next morning, not a soft drizzle, but a heavy, relentless downpour that blurred the windows and drowned out even the hum of the espresso machine in the kitchen. Maya stood in the doorway of the sunroom, watching the glass mist up from the inside, her breath slowing as she counted the seconds between thunder. She hadn't slept. Not really. Ava was still in bed, thankfully undisturbed, and Daniel was already in his study on a call with Morris, discussing tactical response options. But Maya couldn't stop thinking about the bullet. The engraving, the scar on the marble angel wing. She touched her necklace, the tiny gold cross her mother had given her as a teenager, and took a deep breath. Not to pray, just to hold still. She was about to turn back toward the kitchen when something moved outside. Fast, low to the ground. She blinked, squinting through the rain. It was too quick to be a dog, too calculated to be a deer. A person. She turned and ran toward the hall. Daniel. He was already moving, stepping out of the study with his phone pressed to his ear. "West Garden," she said quickly. Something moved. Too fast. He nodded, pulling up the camera feed from his app. Static flickered for a second, then came a blur of movement across Zone 3. "Get Ava," he ordered. "Now." "Luh." Maya ran upstairs as Daniel barked into his phone. "Troy, breach on the west side. Immediate lockdown. Engage Team Alpha and alert Morris." Ava was groggy but obedient. Maya grabbed her coat, pulled boots over her pajamas, and wrapped her in a thick blanket. "Where are we going?" Ava asked, rubbing her eyes. "Just to the safe room, sweetie," Maya said, forcing calm. "It's a game, okay? A quiet one." Ava nodded, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. They passed the hallway just as Daniel reached the secret panel in the wall, a reinforced steel door disguised as part of the wine cabinet. With a fingerprint and a passcode, it slid open. The room was small but fortified, bulletproof walls, oxygen ventilation, its own cell signal, and enough supplies for 48 hours. Maya and Ava stepped inside. Daniel hesitated. "Come with us," Maya said, voice tight. "I need to see this through," he said, hand lingering on the door. "You stay with her." The door sealed with a final hiss. Inside the safe room, Ava curled up in Maya's lap, and Maya whispered stories, anything she could think of. Not about fear, not about fire, but of magic trees and dandelions that whispered back when the wind blew right. But her ears never stopped listening. And somewhere, beyond the concrete and steel, chaos was waking. Outside, Daniel followed Troy and two other guards through the rain-slicked stone paths toward the west garden. The hedges swayed violently with the storm wind, and visibility was low. Then they saw it. Blood. A smear across the white garden steps. Troy motioned for his team to fan out. They approached with caution. A second trail of blood led toward the tool shed. Door ajar. Daniel raised his hand. "Wait." He approached slowly, weapon-drawn military precision from years of private training that most of his investors didn't even know about. Inside the shed, slumped in the corner, was a man. Not Thomas Rayner, but someone younger, a scout. Unarmed, bleeding from the shoulder. Daniel yanked the hood back. "Who sent you?" he snapped. The man groaned. "He's coming." "Who?" He said. "She has to be silenced before the hearing." Daniel's blood ran cold. "The hearing?" The man coughed, blood spraying onto the cement floor. "Too late now. He's already inside." Daniel's eyes widened. "Troy, check every room now." The team scrambled. Daniel took off toward the house, boots splashing through puddles, the wind howling in his ears. He reached the back terrace, then the kitchen door kicked it open. The house was eerily silent. Then he heard it, a low creak upstairs. Not near Ava's room. His. He ran, taking the stairs two at a time. And then he saw him, Thomas Rayner, standing at the top of the stairs outside Daniel's bedroom, a pistol in hand, an expression of calm like he belonged there. "Rayner," Daniel growled. Rayner smiled faintly. "Mr. Reed, you have something I need. You're not walking out of here." "That's true," Rayner said calmly. "But she isn't either." They moved at the same time. Daniel lunged. Rayner fired. The bullet grazed Daniel's side. Pain bloomed sharp and hot, but he kept moving, slamming his shoulder into Rayner's chest, tackling him backward into the hallway wall. They struggled violently, fists, knees, raw adrenaline. Rayner's gun skidded across the floor, vanishing under the guest room door. Daniel pinned him for a moment, but Rayner clawed at his injured side, drawing blood. Then, crack. A vase smashed over Rayner's skull. He collapsed. Behind him stood Maya, breathing hard, eyes wide, one hand still holding the broken ceramic. Daniel exhaled, staggered, blood staining his shirt. "You're not in the safe room," he said hoarsely. "She was asleep," Maya whispered. "I heard footsteps. I couldn't stay." "Do?" Daniel leaned against the wall, gripping his side. Maya knelt beside him. "You're bleeding." "I've had worse." "You idiot." He smiled faintly. Sirens wailed again, this time close. Maya turned back to Rayner, unconscious but alive. "Is it over?" she asked. Daniel looked at her. "I don't know." By the time Morris and the paramedics arrived, Rayner was secured in the back of a federal vehicle, and Daniel was being stitched up in his own kitchen. "Clean shot," the medic said. "No exit wound, but no internal damage either. You're lucky." "I'm stubborn," Daniel muttered. Maya stood nearby, arms crossed, trembling slightly. Morris approached. "We're pushing up the hearing. Rayner's capture changes everything. But Maya, this means you'll have to testify in person." She looked at Daniel. He nodded once. "I will," she said. Morris handed her a sealed envelope. "Witness credentials, new ID. When it's over, you'll have protection. Options. But for now, stay sharp. This isn't over." Maya took the envelope, and this time, she didn't flinch. Maya hadn't worn a dress like this in years. Not since her mother's church service the previous fall back, when life still carried the illusion of control. The fabric was black, understated, fitted just right. Simple pearls around her neck. Nothing to distract, nothing to invite scrutiny, just the truth. Daniel waited by the door of the courthouse's secured witness entrance, his gray suit crisp, hair slicked back, jaw set like stone. He hadn't slept. Maya knew this not because of how he looked, but how he stood, not rigid, not alert, just bracing, as if he were walking her toward a storm. "I can still do this," she whispered. He looked down at her, his voice low. "You've already done more than most people would in a lifetime." Maya nodded. "I'll be right outside the chamber," Daniel said. "Every second." "I know." They walked the final steps together. Then the door opened, and she was gone from his sight. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature but in silence. It was the kind of silence that stretched across tension like a tightrope. All eyes turned as Maya entered, most of them belonging to people in dark suits, seated with laptops or whispering to aides. A few rows held media, restricted by court order from cameras but not from judgment. At the far end, the bench loomed. Judge Hilary Dawes, a black woman in her 60s, presided. Her gavel rested untouched, her eyes held storms. Maya was led to the stand by Agent Morris. He gave her a nod before stepping back. "State your full name for the record," the prosecutor said. Maya's voice was steady. "Maya Elaine William." "And your current occupation?" "Child care provider," she answered. "Private residence." The prosecutor began slow, respectful, built the timeline. "How old were you when you were placed into the custody of Street Catherine's Home for Girls?" 11. "Were you placed there willingly?" Maya hesitated. "No. My mother was overwhelmed. The state intervened." The questions came faster. The timeline of abuse. The nights of locked doors. The whispered threats. The sudden fire that leveled the east wing of the home. And the silence that followed. Maya spoke with clarity, not dramatics. She gave facts, not embellishment. But when they reached Thomas Rayner, her voice shifted. "I remember the sound of his keys. He didn't speak much, just watched. If you were quiet, he left you alone. If you cried, he stood in the doorway and smiled. That was worse." The room tensed. Did you ever witness Mr. Rayner harming another child? Maya nodded slowly. Yes. Did you report it? Her voice broke slightly. I was a child. I thought they'd hurt me too. Gasps echoed from the media row. The judge didn't gavel. She let the truth settle. The defense lawyer stood now, lean, pale, with a voice like melted ice. Miss William, he began, you stated you were 11 when you were placed at the home. Yes. Do you recall the names of every adult employed there at the time? No, just some. Is it possible your memory is flawed? Maya held his gaze. My memory is burned into me. He nodded, fake sympathy curving his lip. And yet, you waited almost 20 years to come forward? Maya didn't flinch. Because I was taught to survive, not speak. Daniel, watching on the monitor outside, gripped the arm of his chair. The defense continued. Miss William, you are aware that there are no surviving records from the institution, that your testimony cannot be corroborated by paperwork? I'm aware, she said. They burned the building to erase us, but fire doesn't erase memory. The jury looked at her now with softened eyes. One woman dabbed her cheek. Do you have any physical evidence? Any photographs? Journals? I have scars, Maya said. Not all are on the outside. The defense lawyer faltered, but recovered. You currently live in the home of a wealthy benefactor, do you not? Maya stiffened. Objection, the prosecutor snapped. Irrelevant. Sustained, the judge said. Counselor, move on. But Maya looked directly at the jury. I live there, she said calmly, because his daughter was grieving, because I held her when no one else could reach her. I didn't ask for shelter. I gave it. And for the first time, the courtroom leaned toward her. Not away. The session lasted 3 hours. When Maya stepped outside, the sun struck her like a floodlight. She squinted, momentarily blinded until Daniel's hand caught her elbow. You did it, he said. She shook her head. I started it. He opened the door to the car. The rest comes next. They sat in silence as the car pulled away. I thought I'd feel lighter, she admitted. But I feel scraped, raw. That's what truth does, Daniel said. It cuts. She turned to look at him. You stayed. He met her eyes. You think I could walk away now? She smiled faintly. Outside the window, the city kept moving, as if nothing monumental had just happened. But inside the car, inside them, something had shifted. That evening, Maya found a letter in her room, handwritten, no envelope. I watched you today. You didn't just speak, you testified. That's a sacred thing. Ava said she wants to be brave like you. So do I. D. She held the letter against her heart, then walked out to the greenhouse. Daniel was there, watering the basil plant Ava had named Sir Leafy. He turned as she approached. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around him, pressed her forehead to his chest, listened to his heartbeat. He didn't speak either. He just held her. And for the first time since she was 11, Maya felt what safety could sound like. 2 days after Maya's testimony, the Reed estate was quieter than usual, but not in a peaceful way. It was the silence before a storm. Daniel had doubled security again. No one came in or out without being logged and reviewed. He even canceled 2 major investor meetings, something his assistant had called professional suicide, to which he simply replied, so be it. Because something didn't sit right. Rayner was in custody, yes. The courtroom had heard Maya's voice echo through the truth. But Daniel knew men like Rayner never acted alone. And shadows like those didn't vanish overnight. Maya stayed mostly upstairs. Ava clung to her more than usual, sensing the charged stillness in the air. She didn't ask for cartoons. She didn't even argue about bedtime. She simply curled into Maya's arms every night and said, just stay here. And Maya did. That morning, as Daniel walked through the eastern corridor, one he rarely used except to reach the wine cellar, he heard it. A faint metallic clink. He stopped. The corridor was empty. No footsteps. No movement. He waited. Listened. Clink. He traced the sound to a floorboard near the far wall. Bent down. Pressed. The board shifted slightly. Not loose from wear, but deliberately altered. He fetched a flathead screwdriver from the drawer in the mudroom and returned. With slow precision, he pried it open. Beneath the board was a shallow space, and in it an envelope, sealed in wax, yellowed with time. He took it out, heart beating louder now. Opened it. Inside were photographs. Black and white. Grainy. surveillance quality. Children, faces partially obscured, but one of them was unmistakably young. Maya, eyes large, hollow, standing near a woman in a nun's habit. Daniel sifted through the images. Most were labeled names, dates. Then, beneath them, a typed sheet faded, torn, but legible. It was a manifest. From St. Catherine's Orphanage Trust. 21 names. 9 marked as deceased. 7 as transferred. 2 adopted. 3 missing. 1 was Maya. The others were names Daniel didn't recognize yet. He pocketed the papers and rose, sealing the board back in place. Someone had hidden this here long before he purchased the estate, and that meant someone once connected to St. Catherine's had lived here. Or still did. Daniel took the documents straight to Morris. The agent sat still for a long time after reading them, then muttered, "Son of a bitch." "You recognize the names?" Daniel asked. "One of them," Morris said, tapping a page. Emerson Drake used to run a shell charity that funneled money through dozens of religious nonprofits. The DOJ investigated him in '03, but the case went nowhere. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "You think he's behind the threats?" "I think he's still trying to cover up something that never should have been buried in the first place," Morris said grimly. "These kids, most of them vanished. If we prove this list is real, it could bring down everyone who protected him." Daniel tapped the manifest. "And you think Maya's survival is the crack in the wall? She's the thread that could unravel the entire web." Daniel exhaled. "So what do we do now?" Morris gave a small, dark smile. "Now we turn over rocks, and we find what's still crawling underneath." That night, Daniel brought the photographs to Maya. She stared at them in silence, seated in the sunroom, the firelight flickering across her face. "I remember her," she said, pointing at the nun. "Sister Agatha. She used to force us to kneel on rice if we spoke after lights out." Her voice didn't shake, but her fingers did. Daniel sat beside her. This was hidden beneath the floorboard. Someone didn't want it found. "Maybe they hid it for someone to find when it mattered most," she said. Daniel looked at her. "Like now?" "Like now," she echoed. Maya flipped through the names. When she reached the 2 marked missing, aside from herself, she paused. "Annabelle Grant," she whispered. "That's not a name I've heard in years." "You knew her?" "We shared a bunk for 6 months. Then one night she was gone. They said she'd been adopted." "And you believed them?" "I wanted to." Daniel stared into the flames. "This list gives us leverage." "Or a target," Maya said quietly. Daniel nodded. "Both." At midnight, a storm rolled in. The kind that shook old window frames and rattled glassware on upper shelves. The kind of rain that washed clean the streets or buried secrets deeper in the mud. Maya couldn't sleep. She stood by Ava's window, watching the wind tangle the trees. Ava slept peacefully behind her, one hand clutching a corner of Maya's sweater. Then came the light. Not lightning. A flash. Bright. Too white. Too quick. Camera flash. Maya's heart dropped. She moved fast, pulling Ava gently from the bed and carrying her down the hallway. She didn't scream, didn't panic, but she moved like fire was behind her. Daniel met her at the stairwell, pistol already in hand. "East side," she whispered. "Someone's out there." They descended quickly. Troy and his team were already sweeping the perimeter. Daniel pulled up the feed, and there he was. A man in a black raincoat, face partially obscured by a scarf, crouched just beyond the line of hedges. Watching, but not approaching. Morris arrived 20 minutes later, soaked through. He studied the footage. "He wants you to know he's close." "Why not break in?" Daniel asked. "Because fear is more effective than force," Morris said. "He wants Maya rattled before the hearing resumes." "She's not rattled," Daniel said, turning to her. Maya, who stood near the window, watching the darkness beyond the trees, didn't blink. "No," she said, "not rattled. Just ready." The morning of the resumed hearing was gray, overcast, and eerily quiet. There was no press crowd this time. The courthouse had restricted attendance to protect the case's integrity. Still, inside the Reed estate, the atmosphere was coiled like a spring. Troy's team swept the property 3 times before sunrise, and Agent Morris had been up all night coordinating with federal marshals. Maya sat at the kitchen table, sipping black coffee. Her hands didn't tremble anymore. There was no makeup on her face, no jewelry, no mask, just presence. Just steal. Daniel paced near the counter, cell phone in hand. They're securing the side entrance, he said. Maya nodded. Do we have a start time? 11 sharp. She looked at the clock. 9:26 a.m. Ava peeked into the kitchen in her slippers, hair mussed. Mommy, she said. It caught Maya every time. She turned. I'm here, sweetheart. Will you be back before bedtime? Maya knelt. I promise I'll kiss you goodnight, no matter what. Ava nodded, then walked over and handed her something, her tiny toy rabbit, Dr. Wiggles, who had a bandage on one ear from a tea party gone wrong. He's good luck, Ava whispered. He always helps me when I'm scared. Maya's throat tightened. Thank you, baby. He'll stay in my pocket. Daniel watched them with something close to reverence. Then he turned, jaw set. It's time. The courtroom buzzed like a live wire when Maya entered, but this time, the energy was different. Not anticipation resistance. There were more lawyers today, more suits, and a man at the far back Maya didn't recognize until he stood up. Emerson Drake, older than his photographs, thinner, his hair slicked and his tie blood red. He didn't flinch when she met his gaze. He smiled. A warning, not a greeting. Maya sat at the witness stand again. The same chair, the same judge. But today, the air was heavier. Not just legal pressure. Danger. The prosecutor stood. Miss, William, we'd like to enter new evidence into the record. He held up the list. The manifest from the floorboard. Exhibit B7, he announced. A document recovered from the private estate of Daniel Reed, previously the residence of a former trustee of Street Catherine's. The list includes Maya Williams' name, as well as numerous others now confirmed deceased or missing. There was a sharp intake of breath from the gallery. The prosecutor continued. Miss, William, do you recognize this document? I do, she said, and I recognize the handwriting. It belonged to Sister Helen, the senior administrator. She wrote our names down during check-in. Every time someone left, she marked the sheet. Can you confirm the date of the fire? December 3rd, 2006. And you were presumed dead? Yes, I escaped through the laundry chute and ran until I collapsed on the side of the highway. You were found by a truck driver? A man named Arthur Breen. He drove me to the county hospital. The prosecutor handed her a photo, the same one from under the floor. A 10-year-old Maya in a torn nightgown, standing near a fence, eyes distant. Is this you? Yes. Your Honor, the prosecutor turned. We request an immediate inquiry into the reopening of criminal charges against Street Catherine's former board and funding network, including Mr. Emerson Drake. Gasps exploded in the room. The judge nodded solemnly. So ordered. Drake stood. His lawyer objected. Your Honor, this is prejudicial and speculative. My client has no direct link. Judge Dawes raised her gavel. Your client's link is inked in the handwriting of a woman who died under suspicious circumstances. Sit down. The room crackled with tension. Maya's hands tightened on the stand. Then, the defense attorney stepped forward, Rayner's representative. We'd like to question the witness on the nature of her current relationship with Mr. Daniel Reed. No. The judge gave a hard look. Counselor, you are skirting dangerous lines, he pressed. The witness lives in the estate. Is it not true, Miss William, that Mr. Reed is paying for your legal representation? Maya didn't blink. He offered protection when no one else did. Is that all he offered? Objection. Sustained. But the damage was already aimed. Maya turned to the jury. Let me be clear. No one gave me this story. No one wrote my memory for me. I have lived this. I have survived it. And I'm speaking now because no child should ever be buried beneath paperwork and burned walls. Judge Dawes nodded once. We will reconvene tomorrow to review newly submitted evidence. Court is adjourned. Outside, Maya exited through the side doors with Daniel and Morris flanking her like sentinels. Reporters shouted from the street beyond the barricades. Cameras flashed. A few people held signs. One of them read, "She's telling the truth." N. Another said, "Children don't forget." Daniel's driver opened the SUV door, but just as Maya reached for the handle, pop, a sound like a champagne cork. Then another, pop, pop. Screams rang out. Maya ducked. Daniel tackled her to the sidewalk. Security swarmed. Glass shattered behind them. Someone had shot at the courthouse entrance. "Sniper," Morris shouted. "Get them in the car now." Daniel shoved Maya and Ava's lucky rabbit into the seat before climbing in after her. The door slammed, and the vehicle peeled away from the curb. Maya shook, heart thundering, ears ringing. "Are you hurt?" Daniel demanded. "No," she said, barely audible. "Blood?" She checked. "Just rain." "No blood." Daniel exhaled. His hands shook for the first time since this began. Maya looked out the window at the blurring city. "They're not just scared," she said. "They're desperate." Morris's car followed behind at full speed, and Maya gripped Dr. Wiggles in her hand like a shield. Because sometimes the thing that keeps you brave is believing someone else needs you to be. The final day began without Sunday. The sky hung low and colorless, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Inside the courthouse, there were no whispers, no buzzing crowd, no camera flashes, only silence. Tactical officers lined every entrance, rooftop, and hallway. Agent Morris moved like a storm in a suit, issuing orders into his earpiece, with the calm urgency of a man who'd played this game too many times and lost too much. Daniel stood at Maya's side as they entered the secure hallway leading to the courtroom. "You sure about this?" he asked. Maya didn't hesitate. "If I don't see this through, they win." He gave a faint nod. "Then I'll be here when you walk back out." "See ya." She gave him a look, one that held every scar, every unspoken fear, and all the quiet power she'd earned in fire. "Not if," she said. "When?" Inside the courtroom, Judge Dawes sat straighter than ever. Her robe was crisp, her eyes unreadable. The prosecution was already in place. The defense side looked rattled. Emerson Drake had not returned, but his lawyer had. A final power move. Denew, delay, disappear. Too late. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, we now present the final pieces of evidence from the Reed Estate Archives, audio transcripts, sealed correspondence between former trustees of Street Catherines and federal charity oversight boards. The contents show direct financial contributions to silence abuse reports between 2002 and 2006. The courtroom pulsed with shock. He continued, "We also request the immediate suspension of all affiliated funding streams and recommend the convening of a federal grand jury." Granted, the judge said. The defense lawyer's face went pale. Then it was Maya's turn to speak again. One last time, she stepped to the front of the courtroom, not to the witness stand but directly in front of the jury. "Permission to address the court directly?" she asked. Judge Dawes gave a single nod. "Speak, Miss William." Maya turned to the jurors. They were tired, worn, overwhelmed, but they were listening. "When I was 10, she began, "I believed grown-ups knew the difference between right and wrong, that if something bad happened, someone would stop it." She took a breath. "When I was 12, I realized they wouldn't. Pause, and now I'm 29, and I'm standing here not just for myself, but for every little girl whose name got erased, for every foster kid who ran, not because they were bad, but because they were in danger." She turned toward the judge. "You asked for truth. I gave it. It's not pretty. It's not easy. But it's real. And it's not just mine. It belongs to all of us now." Silence. And then, the sound. A single person clapping. Soft, steady. Then another joined in. And another. Until even the stenographer had paused, hands trembling slightly as applause rippled through the gallery, not loud, but true. Judge Dawes didn't silence it. She let it echo, and when it faded, she spoke. "This court will issue formal subpoenas for all named individuals. Miss William, you are to be placed under federal witness protection until the grand jury process concludes." The gavel came down. Once, and the chapter closed. Outside, the rain had returned, but it didn't feel heavy this time. Maya stepped onto the courthouse steps, flanked by Daniel and Morris. Protesters cheered behind the barriers. Signs waved. One had Maya's face printed on it with the words, "Truth finds a voice." A small girl reached over the barricade to hand her a flower. Maya accepted it with tears in her eyes. When they reached the car, Daniel opened the door and turned to her. "We have two options," he said. "One, we disappear for a while somewhere quiet, maybe Colorado, somewhere with no headlines. And two, she asked. He smiled faintly. We start something louder. She laughed softly. I think I've had enough quiet to last a lifetime. They climbed into the car. That night, back at the estate, Maya tucked Ava into bed. The little girl yawned and blinked up at her. Are the bad people gone? Maya hesitated. They're not all gone, she said honestly, but they don't get to scare us anymore. Ava nodded sleepily. Because we're brave? Because we're louder. She kissed her cheek and turned off the light. In the hallway, Daniel waited. There's something I need to give you, he said. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a certificate from a non-profit legal foundation one Daniel had funded that morning. It read, the Maya William Justice Initiative, dedicated to survivors who refuse silence. She stared at it, stunned. Daniel, you didn't just survive, he said. You lit a path. She folded the certificate slowly, carefully, then reached for his hand, and held it. Weeks later, a news anchor's voice carried across living rooms nationwide. Breaking tonight. A federal grand jury has opened formal investigations into multiple former religious institutions, following the testimony of a survivor whose voice has ignited a national reckoning. And somewhere, a girl in a group home watched the TV with wide eyes. Hope bloomed quietly in her chest, because someone like her had spoken, and the world had listened. In a world that often silences the weak and protects the powerful, the truth still matters. This story reminds us that courage isn't always loud, it's sometimes found in the quiet strength of someone who chooses to speak, even when their voice trembles. Maya William didn't have wealth, power, or protection, but she had something more enduring: conviction. She reminded us that justice isn't given, it's fought for, often by those who have every reason to walk away, but choose instead to stand. Through her journey, we learn that compassion can pierce through pain, that the act of listening to a child, to a survivor, to a stranger can change lives, and that even in the shadow of corruption, there is light waiting to break through, because truth, once spoken, cannot be unheard, and healing, once started, cannot be undone. This story isn't just about one woman's past. It's about all of us, and what we choose to do when injustice comes knocking at our door.